Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But as John mentioned, there are some this offseason. It's the NBA, especially with now that if the way the schedule is projected to go, will be a normal offseason, longer offseason. So and some interesting players still on the block. Yeah, I mean Bradley Beal, who's been on like trade talks for years. Porzingis kind of popped up this year. Don't know what's really happened with the Timberwolves. With the KAT and DAngelo. I mean, I forget DAngelo Russell's still on the Timberwolves just because he really hasn't played this year. A lot of other guys, but yeah. Any players that you think, or especially big time players, will be moved this offseason?
I mean, it's a weird situation for all these guys, right? Because with Bradley Beal, he said he wanted to stay. The Wizards didn't want to trade him, but they suck. So at some point, you have to. It's either you're going to build around Bradley Beal or you're going to do a full, rebuild. And at this point, just based on their play, I mean, they got Russell Westbrook, and they're still like they're not a good basketball team. And I don't know if anyone really believes that with Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook as your two best players, that you could build a championship contender with those guys, unless you were to get, some guy who is probably better than both of those dudes. So it just feels like for the Wizards and their own sake, trading Bradley Beal for a treasure trove of assets would be the best thing that they could do for their own situation, regardless of how much they love Bradley Beal, because it doesn't feel like holding on to him is necessarily going to do them any good, because him being there will enable them to be good enough to where they won't ever be in a position to get that top pick. Uh, but they're not good enough to where they're really a playoff team. Um, so I could see him moved. Timberwolves, it's sort of the same thing. They brought DAngelo Russell in because they wanted to keep Carl Anthony Towns happy, right? And the goal there was potentially make a run at Devin Booker because all three of those guys wanted to play together. Well, with the Suns being this good, I don't see Devin Booker, which it was already kind of far fetched because he signed his huge extension.
Yeah,
So the only way that he would leave is he demands a trade or they just get rid of him because they suck. But as we've seen with the addition of Chris Paul, the development of Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton, and just all the different additions that they made. Jay Crowder, really underrated addition. Um, they're very good this year. They're very competitive, and Devin Booker he's flourishing. He's doing what he always did, but now he actually has defense around him. He has a complete team. He's got a true point guard who, no offense to Ricky Rubio, but is better than Rubio was. So yeah, I don't see Devin Booker leaving, which leaves the Timberwolves in the spot where, okay, we have Anthony Edwards, who is clearly our future. He's looked really good this season. He's
yes.
super athletic, really good scorer, all that stuff. Do we shift towards building around him and moving KAT and DLo, and just sort of blowing it up? Because I mean they're the worst team in the league right now. Like they just have the worst record, which is crazy because they have some talent. I don't think they're going to finish the season with the worst record, just with like how the Rockets are trending.
They're only half game behind,
Um,
or 1.5 games behind the Rockets. Sorry, excuse me.
yeah. So, and they have moments where they look really good. Like they played my Celtics last night, and they looked really good in the first half. And in the second half, they just choked it, and they still forced overtime and almost beat the Celtics with Tatum putting up 53. So, I mean, they have moments where they look decent, but clearly they're losing a lot of games. Coaching's not there. There's just a lot to, once again, similar to the Wizard situation. Can we realistically build a contender around these three guys? I don't think so. So, best case scenario, you offload D'Angelo Russell, you offload Karl Anthony Towns, because if you get rid of D'Lo, who's the most likely one to go, Carl's going to be, he's not going to want to be there anymore. And it seems like he probably doesn't anyway because they suck. So you offload both, you get a ton of draft picks, ton of compensation, you build for the future around Anthony Edwards. Um, so that, I mean, those two situations are similar, but then the interesting one is Porzingis and the Mavericks, because they're actually winning. They're on like a 10-game win streak, but it feels like the Mavericks are just sort of tired of like how unavailable he is. He's always hurt, and it sucks because he's a very talented player, but just because he's not available, I think it's stunting their growth, because Luca, he's doing his thing. They're actually doing pretty well. They're getting some sort of semblance of a defense, but they have all this money tied up into Porzingis that they can't really improve the team much outside of, through the draft or minor trades. And I think that Mark Cuban has this urgency of, we want to build around Luca as he's continuing to grow because he knows eventually Luca's going to come up on a contract extension. And if they just suck or they're just plateaued and they can't do anything, it's the NBA. So he could always potentially leave. So interesting situation for all four. Realistically, I think all four are going to get traded. The least likely one to me would be Bradley Beal, just because he's expressed a desire to stay in Washington.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, I don't know much to say on Bradley Beal. I feel like just to comment on Bradley Beal, Washington, if they want to go for real, they have to also find a way to get rid of Russell Westbrook, and that's more of a compliment to Russell Westbrook. So we've seen
That's hard.
what he's done with some pretty poor Oklahoma City teams. So they're gonna have to either get rid of both of them, which I feel like we saw last year. It was granted it was a shortened off season, very shortened off season. So maybe this year they'll have more luck finding a suitor or finding a trade, especially with Russell's contract. But yeah, it's between the least likely to be moved between Bradley Beal and I think KAT, just because big man is just, especially a big man like KAT, generational big man, is just so hard to get. And granted, I feel like they could talk to him and be like, hey, look, we're gonna get rid of DAngelo just because we need more defense. Like we're out here, yeah, we're scoring with Anthony Edwards and Malik Beasley, but man, we can't play like a defense, man. So we're gonna get rid of him, get some assets, build some defense. You still have Anthony, maybe give us another few years. I don't know, but I could still see it's tough. But and the Porzingis, yeah, I feel like Porzingis probably isn't too happy just because it's just like we mentioned before, it's such a Luka centric offense where it just feels like Porzingis is more of a role player, and even when Luka's off the floor for maybe probably like 10 minutes of the game, he's been just spotting up basically or sending screens. It's like, oh, all of a sudden now it's my turn, and he doesn't have much time to find a rhythm, because we saw that in New York, he was the guy, and their offense flowed more around him. So I would be surprised if he moved. As to where, that's where it gets tough. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know he signed his extension. I would love for him to come to San Antonio. We need a good big man. I love Jakob Poeltl, but he's not, obviously the offensive force that Porzingis is. And but I feel like Porzingis would like our offense. I mean, your Celtics, if somehow they could swing that, you would kind of been wanting a big man for a while. And I know, and it's a little more. I know it's a lot of Tatum and Brown, but I feel like at least Brad Stevens, he knows how to set up plays to keep his big man involved. We saw that with Al Horford and things like that. So,
and I would also say if the Celtics did get another piece, Kemba's probably gone. So
yeah,
that opens up all of his touches.
and they still have some assets. Maybe Peyton Pritchard's paid pretty well. Maybe you send him and someone
Robert Williams has
and
been
Bobbert, yeah.
balling.
Yeah, so there you go. You still give the Mavs a replacement big man, and Rick Carlisle's a pretty good coach too. So, he'll probably see how talented Robert Williams is and be okay with that. I mean, any other place, really can't think. I mean, maybe Portland's always stuck in cap space casualty. I don't know what the heck Portland's doing, but they always don't have any money. But,
Yeah. One team that I think could be interesting in the trade market would be maybe the Charlotte Hornets. I mean, they got LaMelo Ball. Maybe they want to be aggressive.
yeah, they've been
They're
searching
looking
for a
like,
big for a while.
yeah, and they were looking like they would be a playoff team. So you have LaMelo. You're probably, I mean, I don't think
The
they'd get
two,
rid of Gordon Hayward. So you got
mhm.
Gordon Hayward. I mean, maybe they trade him, but it doesn't seem like his trade value is super high at this point in his career with the amount of money he's making. So, I mean, you got Devontae Graham who you can move. You got Terry Rozier who teams are interested in. I mean, you have Miles Bridges who's still a young, interesting piece. Like you have, you have assets, and they have draft picks. They haven't like traded any of their picks like that. So that's a potential option. Maybe the Atlanta Hawks. Maybe they want to get rid of
Yeah,
Capella. Some of these young guys. I mean,
yeah, a lot
they're
of
another interesting
options.
team. And the big one that I think would be super aggressive and would totally go for any of these guys would be the Knicks.
Yeah,
Except for Porzingis. I don't. I mean, it'd be kind of funny if they brought him back.
I don't think Nolan would. Just Nolan doesn't
Yeah,
seem like a guy that would be willing to bring back Chris
yeah,
Stapps after because he probably didn't stick up. He could have gotten rid of Phil and kept Porzingis happy, but that didn't happen.
yeah,
They chose to trade Porzingis, and they got rid of Phil like 2 weeks, like in that next offseason, so it didn't freaking matter.
yeah. But I mean, I think the Knicks they would totally love to get Bradley Beal alongside Julius Randle. They'd be over the moon
RJ Barrett could get
for a
some.
DLo or a KAT or I mean, they could even go after Russell Westbrook. Like the Knicks are at a point where they look like they're a playoff team, but they need more. So it seems like they would totally go for anybody, really.
Yeah. So in regards to that's the last point is DAngelo. And he's a solid player, but there's just so many good point guards, especially guards in today's league, where it's tough to really find a spot. I'm trying to see here. Just look. I mean, we all know Orlando loves some point guards, but I'm not sure really if they're in the buying, more in the sell and rebuild mode right now. I'm trying to look at contenders. I mean, maybe New
Maybe
Orleans.
Chicago
Yeah,
or New
but
Orleans. Yeah.
once again, it runs into you're gonna run into the same quandary that Timberwolves ran into, where you got a lot of offense and not a
Yeah.
lot of defense. I mean, besides for Patrick Williams, but Vucevic, not a great defender,
Very true.
and then even if they do keep Laurie this offseason, I love Laurie, but not a great defender either. Really, it's just what Patrick Williams. I don't think they even have Chris Dunn anymore. So, and I imagine they'd have to give up assets, so it'd be hard for them to get another guy via draft. Maybe have to just get one of these bargain bin guys, Wesley Matthews, David Nwaba, in the hope that they work out. But I feel like DLo would definitely be most likely on the move in my opinion. But it'll be interesting because once again, I'm not sure if he's been out due to injury.
He has been. He actually
Okay.
just returned in that game against the Celtics. That was
Okay.
his first game back.
So, but yeah, trying to say, I mean, the King. Oh, sorry, another place maybe for Sacramento. We know Sacramento needs a big man. They're kind of seems like Marvin Bagley and them are going to be moving on. And although it seems like Fox and Halliburton are the main building pieces. Maybe they trade like a Buddy Hield, another shooter for Luka. Maybe Bradley Beal and not Bradley Beal. I'm saying Buddy Hield, and Marvin Bagley and maybe another pick or something, and then get Porzingis. So hey, you still have a young big man who can kind of shoot and do some different things in Bagley. Maybe you can drive his career for Carlisle, get your draft pick, and you have an established shooter in Buddy Hield who seems like he's wanted out for a while anyway. So, and then Kings still have cap space, or probably the contract's probably matched because nobody got his extension. So it's not, you still have. I think they probably still have another room for the max slot. So if they can figure that out, maybe they can finally be a playoff team and more. So, but other than that, I mean, it'll be interesting. I will see where the pieces fall, see how the draft goes too. I believe was it NBA the draft's before free agency. I think right.
I
Yeah, I
can't
think so
remember.
because NFL they're both switch. NFL does free agency first, then draft, and then NBA does draft, then free agency. Which personally, I kind of like. If I was a GM, I would like to do draft first, then free agency, just because draft's way more unpredictable, as to where
Yeah.
pieces fall. And then if the guy that didn't fall to you, you have to get a different position. Then at least in free agency, you can focus on talking to guys that can
It's
address
also,
that need.
I mean, the two leagues free agencies couldn't be more different.
Yeah,
The
that's true.
NFL, I mean, the way that Jerry Jones always talks about free agency is they're just filling holes.
Yeah.
They're not going to go out and get some big time guy, which I think most teams sort of feel like that unless you're one of the bottom feeders. I had a friend send me some graph of like the teams who have spent the most in free agency over like the last 5 years are also all the worst in the league
Yeah.
over the last 5 years. Meanwhile, in the NBA, free agency can be what completely changes a franchise.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned before, we saw what happened with the Clippers overnight. All of a sudden,
In the Nets.
yeah, and then that's been yeah. I feel like Clippers more so just because overnight it's like, oh, Paul George traded to the Clippers, and then number two signed with the Clippers within the night, within a few hours, and then so yeah. I mean, also just keeping just interesting. Just I'm not sure. I mean, OKC has a lot of picks. I know we all assume, but they could push some of their chips in the table and say we'll take Chris Stapps, we'll take a KAT to pair with Shai Gilgeous, or Bradley Beal, and we'll still have a lot more assets. So, and they have a lot of young guys, so maybe they can start doing that. But it's just an interesting team to keep an eye on. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, as per always usual, NBA offseason is always an interesting one. It never fails. So, and heck, I mean, we're technically still in the NFL one, but at least free agency especially will be interesting. Anything else you wanted to add, or?
I mean,
I can't think of any other guys. I mean, I can think of a few low key guys like Laurie. I would like, but he's not like a star or anything. He's just a guy I like.
yeah, I mean,
restricted free
all the
agent.
big names. Those are kind of it right now.
I mean, Lonzo's not really a big name at this point. No offense, Lonzo, but
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of it. I don't want. I mean, obviously, as a Celtics fan, they're linked to like every single free agent and trade thing ever, and everybody clowns Danny Ainge because he never pulls the trigger. and everybody was really disappointed that he went and got Evan Fournier with that huge trade exception, which I was still mad at the exception. It's all those guys we just mentioned, they had their contracts that are like right above what the trade exception could get them, so they couldn't fit it in there. So like I didn't expect Danny to really use it on some big guy. Anyway, regardless, this might be the first time as a fan of the Celtics, just because of the season and how we're playing right now, that if we don't make a big move through, which it probably have to be through a trade, because the free agency stuff is, like I said, it's just not a lot of crazy talent out there. I mean, there is talent, but it's not like these kind of names. I think if Danny doesn't make a trade for somebody big to help out Tatum and Brown, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed.
Yeah.
Most times I've been like obviously wanting these guys and wasn't super happy that he didn't go out and get them, but I have appreciated the patience for a while because Tatum and Brown were still developing. And had we traded either of those guys for like an Anthony Davis or a Kawhi Leonard or whoever, no guarantees that we would have won a title like Toronto did. And then I think both of them would have left, and we'd be sitting here without those two studs. So I've appreciated the patience up to this point. But with I mean, they're both all-stars now. We've seen what they are. They're still going to get better, I think, but it's clear the team needs changes because they suck.
Yeah, they need a buy now. They need to be a buyer, not a seller. Or,
Yep.
So we'll see what
Stop with
happens
the
there.
patience.
Go ahead.
I was saying, just with you saying they need to be a buyer, I was saying stop with the patience. It's time to make a move.
Yeah, it's time to, like you said, like I kind of said what OKC might do. It's something that Boston needs to have that mindset of, of the
Yep.
of
All
the
these young
Nets, of the
players.
Lakers, or even I mean, I'm sure they're in talks with those buyout guys, but maybe they didn't surface. But we'll see. But otherwise, I mean, that will wrap it up for today. A little relatively shorter NBA podcast. Next up will be NFL, and but NBA playoffs coming up soon. We might have to talk about my Spurs next time because it's not looking good. Not that I expected it to be good, but there's some hope there. We were a 6-7 seed for a while. Now we're the 9 seed. We'd have to have a playing game, and for some reason, I feel like we would not be able to beat Memphis. Just I don't know why. I just don't feel like we could beat Memphis in a one game winner go home. So we'll see how that goes. But
Just random point. Memphis could be another team that's in that trade market. Maybe they want to leverage some of their assets because they have a lot of young guys.
yeah, that's true. But it's Memphis. I feel like
Yeah,
no
I mean,
player.
will they do it?
It's tough because like they're not gonna get a lot of free agents, and I feel like unless they draft people, not a lot of people that they're gonna trade for are gonna want to stay after their contract. It's just.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if they go get a guy like KAT, he's already signed. So,
But they already
you gotta
have
wait for a while.
Jaron and Brandon Clark. They would need more of a wing player. So maybe like a let me pull up the list again. Oh no. I guess maybe Beal, maybe a secondary scorer, but they have a pretty good offensive system right now. So, but we'll see. I mean,
I mean, I'm not saying that they're the favorites to sign these guys, but they're another team that could go after someone.
yeah, like a Bradley. Yeah, I mean, Bradley Beal would be a great fit because they already are a pretty good defensive team. I mean, not Bradley's a bad defender; he's just an average, I would say. So, yeah, he has a bunch of defenders and a bunch of versatility. So, and they still don't have Jaren Jackson back. So that's another thing to note too. So that's a team that could be on the rise and could be aggressive this free agency if they can convince someone to to move to Memphis for a couple of years. I don't imagine. I imagine that's pretty tough. But otherwise, as per usual, you can always support us. Give us a like. Let us know how we're doing, or any questions, comments, concerns, whether we talked about. As either whether you watch on YouTube or on our Instagram at Shut Up and Ball Pod, and Facebook page is just Shut Up and Ball, and then Twitter is just at Shut Up and Ball. We're pretty active there, especially on Instagram. But otherwise, I hope everyone enjoys their weekend, and we will see you next week.